Imagine a world plunged into chaos and destruction. The water rises higher and higher, destroying everything in its path. But in the midst of this storm, one single family on a huge wooden ship is kept afloat. This is the story of Noah, his ark, and the question that has plagued scholars and researchers for centuries: did Noah's ark really exist? Hello, dear viewers. Today we are going on a fascinating journey through centuries and continents to uncover one of the Bible's most enigmatic mysteries, the existence of Noah's ark. We will look at scientific theories, archaeological findings, and ancient legends to try to find the answer to this eternal question. Let's begin our journey with a biblical story. According to the book of Genesis, God commanded Noah to build an ark to save his family and every pair of animals from a worldwide flood. The details of this story have been the subject of much interpretation and debate. But what if it's not just a myth? Archaeological research shows that there is evidence of ancient floods in various parts of the world that could have inspired the legend of a worldwide flood. One such place is the region of Mesopotamia, where Sumerian and Babylonian myths also tell of a great flood. In 1949, an expedition led by archaeologist James Ireno discovered the remains of an ancient ship on Mount Ararat in Turkey. Some believe that this is Noah's Ark. Let's take a closer look at what was found there. The remains of a ship found at an altitude of more than 4,000 meters caused a sensation. The ancient logs, preserved in harsh conditions, attracted the attention of scientists from all over the world. They took samples of the wood to determine its age. Radiocarbon analysis showed that the wood was more than 4,500 years old, a time that could fit the biblical narrative. However, skeptics believe that it cannot be Noah's Ark. In their opinion, the object found could be an ancient trading vessel or even a natural stone formation. They point to the lack of clear evidence, such as inscriptions or artifacts that point to a biblical origin. But the mystery only deepens. In 1985, researcher Ron Wyatt announced that he had found a place where the base of the ark could have been located. According to him, this ship-shaped site is located near Mount Ararat and contains traces of iron elements that could have served as the skeleton of the ark. Technological advances in recent decades make it possible to study ancient artifacts in greater detail. Modern methods of wood analysis, X-ray studies, and 3D modeling help scientists to recreate images of ancient objects with unprecedented accuracy. One of the most important aspects of this story is the evidence for the existence of an ancient flood. Geologic studies show that about 7,000 years ago there was a dramatic climate change that could have caused catastrophic flooding in areas of Mesopotamia. In addition, studies of sediments in the Black Sea show that about 5,600 years ago the water level rose sharply, flooding vast areas and forcing people to relocate. These facts may support the theory of a real event that became the basis for the legend of Noah. It is also important to consider the cultural aspects. Legends about the Great Flood are present in the mythologies of many peoples, from Sumerians and Babylonians to Native Americans. This suggests that the memory of the Great Cataclysm has been preserved in the collective consciousness of mankind. Let us take an example from Sumerian mythology, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient work also describes the story of the Great Flood and salvation on a huge ship. The similarities between the Sumerian myth and the biblical story suggest a possible connection between them. Now let's turn to the Jewish sources. The Talmud and other ancient Jewish texts also mention the story of Noah and his ark. These texts supplement the biblical narrative and provide additional details that can help in the search for truth. But what do modern scientists think about it? Paleontologists and archaeologists are conducting research in different parts of the world to find evidence of ancient flooding. Their discoveries show that there have indeed been periods of catastrophic flooding in human history. In China, for example, an ancient settlement was discovered in 2000 that had been flooded by water some 4,000 years ago. This discovery confirms the possibility of large floods in the past, which could be the basis for legends. Now let's turn to researchers of ancient texts. Linguists and historians study ancient manuscripts to understand how the stories of the flood were passed on. They find similarities between the myths of different peoples, suggesting a possible common basis for these stories. However, the story of Noah's Ark is not only of scientific interest, but also of controversy. The question of how exactly the ark could hold all kinds of animals remains open. Some believe it was a miracle, while others try to find rational explanations. Here is an example from practice. In the 19th century, scientists tried to calculate the size of an ark and the number of animals that could fit on it. Their conclusions show that such a ship could exist. but it would require enormous resources and technology that were not available at the time. It is also interesting to consider how the story of Noah's Ark has influenced culture and art. Paintings, books, movies, and even songs are all inspired by this ancient myth. Artists and writers interpret the story in different ways, creating new images and symbols. Take, for example, the famous movie Noah's Ark starring Russell Crowe. This movie presents its own version of the events, adding elements of fantasy and drama. Such interpretations help us to better understand how myths can be adapted to modern realities. But back to scientific research. In recent years, new theories have emerged concerning Noah's Ark. Some scholars believe that the Ark may have been a symbolic image describing the salvation of mankind from moral decay. Others argue that the Ark could have been a real ship, but smaller and used to rescue a small group of people and animals. These theories are based on analysis of ancient texts and archaeological evidence. It is also important to note that the story of Noah's Ark has a deep moral and spiritual meaning. It teaches us about the importance of faith, obedience, and salvation. Whether or not the story was real, it continues to inspire millions of people around the world. The final part of our study is devoted to modern expeditions. In recent decades, teams of researchers have repeatedly traveled to the Ararat Mountains in search of the Ark. They use the latest technology, including satellite imagery and drones, to find traces of the ancient ship. An example of such an expedition is the project of a research team from Turkey and China in 2010. They discovered a structure resembling wooden remains at an altitude of about 4,000 meters. These findings continue to generate controversy among scientists and enthusiasts. But our journey does not end there. There are many other theories and hypotheses we can consider. Perhaps in the future, new discoveries will help us solve this ancient mystery. It is important to remember that each new fact and each new finding brings us closer to the truth. Scientific research continues, and we look forward to new discoveries that may change our understanding of the story of Noah's Ark. Turning to the conclusions, we can say that the story of Noah's Ark remains one of the most mysterious and intriguing mysteries of the ancient world. Whether the Ark was a real ship or a symbolic image, this story continues to stir the minds and hearts of people. Scientific discoveries, archaeological findings, and ancient texts provide us with many fragments of the mosaic we are trying to assemble. But perhaps the main value of this story is not in the evidence, but in the lessons it teaches us. Noah's example teaches us resilience and faith in difficult times. His willingness to follow God's instructions, despite the skepticism of others, inspires us to take decisive action in our own time. Noah's story reminds us of the importance of family, responsibility, and caring for the world around us. One of the most inspiring features of this story is the idea of salvation and a new beginning. Noah and his family, who survived the flood, symbolize the possibility of rebirth and hope even in the most dire circumstances. Let's also look at the cultural impact of this story. It has been reflected in art, literature, and movies. Books, paintings, movies, and even computer games continue to tell the story of Noah to new generations. For example, in literature, one can find many works inspired by this ancient story. Novels, poems, and short stories by various authors explore the themes of faith, survival, and redemption presented in the story of Noah. In art, great masters such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci created their own versions of the image of Noah and his ark. These works are not only impressive in their beauty, but also provoke deep reflections on the meaning of life and human nature. In movies, we see how filmmakers interpret the story, adding their own unique visions and plots. Movies such as Noah's Ark and The Great Flood offer viewers exciting and dramatic versions of the ancient legend. But let's not forget about scientific approaches. Researchers continue to search for evidence of the Ark's existence. Using the most advanced technologies, perhaps new expeditions and discoveries will help shed light on this mystery. Finally, we can ask ourselves, is it important to know if the Ark really existed? Perhaps the main value of this story is its ability to inspire, teach, and unite people around the world. So, dear viewers, our fascinating story about Noah and his ark has come to an end. We hope you have found this journey interesting and informative. We have looked at many aspects of this mystery, from biblical texts and archaeological findings to cultural influences and scientific research. In closing, we invite you to continue to explore, ask questions, and seek answers. After all, the story of Noah's Ark is not only an ancient legend, but also part of our shared cultural heritage that continues to excite and inspire us. Thank you for being with us, and see you again on our channel.